Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eddie Proudfoot podcast. Today, we are going to recap the campaign that we were all a part of for the last 2 years. So, before we get started, I want to introduce the whole panel of people I have here. So, to my left is Swap, who played Hexan at the beginning of the campaign, and we'll see a couple more characters that he ran throughout. And then to my right, we have Conrad, who first played Cyrus, and then followed it up with playing another character that we'll meet later on. And then below me to my left, we have Clay, who played Fargrim through the entire campaign and didn't die once. So let's all give a round of applause for Clay right now for being the longest
Very
surviving
impressive.
party member.
hmm
And then finally, last but not least, we have Emily in my bottom right, who came in a little bit later in the campaign, but played Daphne. Why did that take me long to remember? Who was one of the most lovable characters of the campaign, if I have to say. Um, for no small
I
part
remember.
for being a thieving rogue, even though you weren't much of a rogue and more of a warlock. But I'll let you guys introduce your characters too, so you can not let me do some half-baked introduction. You guys can give your characters the full time of day as they come in. So this campaign started in a made-up world of mine, and I didn't give the whole continent a name, but it was this nice big continent, kind of like Australia-esque in size, but not really at all. But just like the shape, I don't know. It's kind of like this, and so
With some water around.
yeah, with some water around,
Totally.
yeah.
First
In
of all, it
shape,
was
in the sense that it's an island, it's like Australia, but it's way smaller.
It's
but it
way
was like it
small.
was kind of like that right shape, like it was kind of like oblong and like
Yeah.
kind of lumpy, but all in the right areas, you know.
It's in the exact shape of some blood.
It's 300 miles across in the wide direction, just like approximate measuring here.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
how big
sure
Australia is,
I'm
right?
sure some Australians are listening right now and they know exactly that we are spot on with our measurements.
Exactly.
anyway,
Totally.
that was the setting. And you guys started off in a town called Higendwarf, and you were hired to do what swap? Because you were the only person here that was part of the main gang.
If I remember correctly, we were hired as part of hired by the king to be
Yeah.
bodyguards or to just take care of around the city is kind of what I remember. I remember the first training session when we were like, oh yeah, we can
Yes.
get some help.
So it was Hexan, so your first character, and Tifala, who was played by Hannah, who's not here. Gremgin, who was played by Nicole, who's also not here, and Stewart, the lovable gnome, who's played by Alex, who's also not here.
The
Um,
surviving member.
yeah, exactly, last surviving OG member. And you guys were hired to guard the outside of the wall of the town of Higendwarf, which is really like a big city. Now, you also overheard plans, and by you I mean Gremgin, because Gremgin was a rogue, overheard someone in Thieves' Cant talking about robbing a ship, because there was this big ship delivering all this fruit, and it was the big event that started off the campaign. Is like, oh, all the nice fruit has finally arrived into town. Which, for some of the party members that
Yeah,
now see like how fruit kept popping up, it was there from day one.
exactly. What I
It's
do remember that came out of that interaction is we developed a language that we used throughout the campaign that would allow us to communicate with Tifala who would fly around, which was very useful, Smart,
Yeah, that
good
came up quite a bit. Yeah, you guys took like I think it was half a day and developed 25 signals that were bird calls because Tafala was an Aarakocra Druid, and she was scouting out around the ship as you and Gremgin, because Stewart wasn't there for that session, went onto the ship and stole a bunch of black vials.
Yes, which we did we ever find out what they were just like health potions, if I remember correctly, or random.
They were random, but they had a 50% chance of being a health potion. It was just some like random effect, or it healed you a little bit. But yeah, it was my way of
Yeah.
giving you guys some like fun item at low level. And then you
Yeah.
guys went and did the raid where you guys fought your first cultists, and they had those purple swirling smoky cloaks that became very iconic later on.
Is
Yep.
this
You
is this where
Sorry?
we introduced Fargrim? I I
Fargrim
I
came the
was in
second
one
time they fought cultists.
the second okay, because I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
joined for one session and we like
Mhm.
just started to fight cultists, and then after that I was gone, but Fargrim just kind of remained as an NPC for a
Yeah.
while. Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Okay,
not there
so
yet.
now so
not
my
quite.
question is, so did you at that point, I know there was two diverging paths you wanted us to go on, either to kind of continue on the ship and kind of
Mhm.
do that line, or there was something about the prince's daughter or something along the lines of that I vaguely remember.
So what happened there was when you guys did that cultist fight, you found something in their cloak which kind of took you on the direction of the main campaign, which was you found a black planning book and it had events that they were planning out, which drove you
Right.
to some other plot points. So I kind of gave you that as an improvised thing you found, along with some gems you guys found in the banana crates, because there was banana
Yep.
crates where you guys were fighting these cultists because they seem to be linked to the Black Shipping Company, which was my way of saying, hey, maybe you guys should go on the ship. But I honestly, at that point, I didn't have a plan for where you guys were going to go. I honestly thought you'd stay in Higendwarf for a little while longer than you did. You kind of went off of there really quick. And it's because I said in that book there were things going on in the forest, like cult activity. So you went out there, and that's where you guys met Fargrim, who was the barbarian dwarf. I think mountain dwarf, if I remember correctly, right, Clay?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
you guys,
before we
sorry.
did meet
Oh,
him,
yeah, go
did we, before we did meet him, didn't we meet the gnome who taught us about baking as well?
yes, you guys met Tori, who was a tree gnome who lived in a tree. And
Of course, banana bread guy.
Very original.
Yeah, the banana bread guy. And he was very endearing until you guys talked to him for a while and found out that he hated rock gnomes for some reason. And it was really awkward because Stewart was a rock gnome and he didn't talk nicely to him. And then you guys stole from him and left, and Gremmgin took a book on how to dispose of dead bodies. And this was before Gremmgin became an assassin murderer, so which is what happened very shortly after, because Fargrim showed up, you guys went to the woods, and you found a cultist sacrifice going on. They succeeded in the sacrifice, but you killed them all. And then the stone melted. You guys went into the lair. There was more cultists there. They all started sacrificing themselves for a long time. And then you finally killed the main guy who was doing the ritual after all of the other cultists sacrificed themselves into this pit of fiery doom. And then you went in the other room that was green and glowing, and there was a green glowing circle with a symbol on it that none of you recognized. And there was 3 items in there and a man named Cletus.
Oh, Cletus.
That's where
And you
Cletus came
This
from.
is making
Yeah,
a lot
you
more
see-
sense now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you see,
Jeez.
we should have known. There was like first thing, we took all those
Spoilers.
3 items and we're like, oh, free items.
So I got introduced to Cletus as Cletus is a farmer that we found, and he's like trying to get back home, and he really needs help. And then it turns out he's like hanging out with the cultists in their cursed laboratory of doom. And everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this guy just needs help. He doesn't know where he's going. And like,
You know, we tried really hard. We did like a lot of, I remember we did like inside checks and everything, and we figured like he wasn't lying. Like, you know, he's like, he just needed to go back to his farm. So we're like, okay, we have someone to help. And
Okay.
yeah,
So I'm gonna write notes for the reveal so I don't forget, but I'm gonna say the first one is why Cletus was there in the first place. But you guys probably
Yep.
have some good ideas, but I'll tell you Cletus' origin as the first reveal. So you guys
And I think
get to know why Cletus was there, but I'll save that for later. He
I
did
think it's
tell
also,
Sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
guess it might be also important to mention about the 3 objects that we took. Those will
Yes.
come.
Yeah. First though, just to finish off with Cletus, so he did tell the party that he was a farmer and he had a farm on the other side of Craigshaft Ridge where they farmed, I believe, Swap, do you remember what he farmed?
Oh God.
It's I have it written down in one of my notebooks, so I'm just gonna go looking for that really quick.
For some reason I'm thinking of corn, but I don't know if that's
It was I think it was pigs and goats is what he farmed.
that
Yeah, here we
sounds
go.
right.
He said piglets and goats, and he had a wife named Hilda, and she was a hill dwarf. Hilda the hill dwarf from the hills, I think is what he said to you guys. And yeah, he offered to pay you guys, I think, 400-ish gold if you took him back. Because you weren't gonna do it, and then
Because a
Stuart's like,
farmer-
we need to be paid for this.
I think now it's coming back to me why I think Alex convinced us that we should.
Yeah, Alex was because Stuart's whole thing was he's all about the money, so Alex played it like, yeah, we're not gonna help you unless you pay us, so pay us.
Hey, but where does a farmer get 400 gold that they can just give back? Like, or just give to a party for just walking them home?
So one, it turns out he was lying. Two, I have
Yeah.
no concept of how money works in D&D, so I just make up arbitrary sums to try and impress people. And I think he said a far lower amount, but Alex is like, I'm not doing anything if you're only going to offer me 50 gold. And so then I just kept
Right.
upping it.
And
But-
this is a point in
sorry.
the campaign where none of us had money. We were all dirt poor. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, 400 gold. Great. I'll buy
Yeah.
plate armor.
I think you guys were still level 1 or 2 at this point. Conrad, I don't remember what level you came in at. Do you remember if you came in at level 4 or level 3 or?
It was level 3 or 4. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
Sounds
remember
right.
exactly.
But
Hmm.
to Swap's point from earlier, the cursed items are important. So there was 3 of them, but one of them wasn't important because I think Tifala either attuned to it and didn't use it, or we just retconned that she never attuned to it because she didn't use it. So
Yeah.
but the ones that were important ended up being the Chalice of Madness, which is what Hexan attuned to, and the Amulet of Aggravation, which is what Gremmgin attuned to.
Did they know
Um,
those names when they attuned to them?
Not till
No.
after I read them the effects.
Okay.
So these
Yeah.
were items I made up and homebrewed to be fair, but in hindsight, I think they took away a little bit too much player agency, and I don't know if I do it again. But Swap, you can tell me if you felt that way about it.
I think it was like a fun, like I like the twist to it. It definitely did change my character because I think I remember, so my character initially started off as a monk, and I remember him like having like I think it was a lawful good background, and he was like he was gonna help people, like growing up with a Dragonborn monk. And I think it was after the items, I'm like, yeah, no, I definitely cannot keep playing in that way.
Yeah, there was also the party member next to you, Gremgin, that kind of helped in that corruption a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what the items did was the Chalice made it so that Gremgin would deal an extra 1d6 psych damage on every attack, but whenever Gremgin was hit, Gremgin would take an extra 1d6 psych damage. And anytime Gremgin met a disagreeable NPC, he had to do a DC 15 wisdom save. And then if he failed it, he would start planning out a murder against that NPC. It did not have to be immediate. It could have been over a very long period of time, but in their head, it was decided that person was a target. The Chalice was much more confusing, and I think I'd have to go pull up the actual rules I wrote down to cite it correctly. But in essence, it gave you an extra 1d6 on your attacks, right, Swap?
Yes.
And I believe it counted as a weapon you could use for unarmed strike, right? I did it so you could use it as a monk weapon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so it was like really nice for using it for my case, and everything I drank through it just tasted really great, so I was addicted to it pretty much.
Yes, and you couldn't drink things that weren't from the cup. If you drank something from out of the cup, it basically tasted like garbage, and you weren't able to consume things out of the cup, or that were not out of the cup. And the other thing was it gave you an affinity for alcohol that may or may not have harmed your character in several situations.
Yeah, no, that it was kind of made it like, do not condone any drinking at all, but it did mean that I was constantly drunk in the campaign. So at the start of every, like after a long rest, I would roll to see exactly how drunk I would get. And it would either buff up my stats or reduce my stats every single time. So I never knew if my stats were going to be good or not. And it did make it really fun, but at the same time,
Yeah,
I feel like
and
it.
sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think and then the whole idea of like the detoxing and the other, it made me a lot more charming which I also remember.
Yeah, it gave you stat buffs and stat minuses, and there was different levels that I came up with, which was kind of me hacking together some stuff from the homebrew rules for drinking rules in D&D. So there's homebrew rules for this, which some campaigns use, some campaigns don't. I've never used them, but I think I took inspiration on some of them for you, but I knocked back some of the downsides because it would be way too negative all the time if I took them as they were, because basically they're there to discourage players from just drinking casually, and it's a way of systematizing how drinking works in D&D. But yeah, you got some version of that. Maybe I'll post it to
Yeah.
one of my social medias after this so people can see exactly how it worked. But yeah, so that was the cursed item. And then you guys went back to town and stole a bunch of horses, which was quite the ordeal. And I think so Fargrim was there for that, but
And I
you weren't there. You were just there in spirit, which was important because that event kind of followed you guys for the rest of the campaign because you ended up killing 4 people. Well, Gremmgin killed 4 people, but you guys were all part of it, so you're all co-conspirators.
Okay, this is not fair because I distinctly remember saying like, I don't want to kill them, and then Gremgin's like, oh, just feed them this, and they'll like just go to sleep. And he successfully lied to me, and I thought it was just a tranquilizer, but apparently it was poison.
Yeah, and at the time you wouldn't have known the difference because they just kind of conked out, but that's what you expected to happen. And then you stole the horses. Meanwhile, Gremgin's distracting the guards that guard the gate into town, and then fails some important deception checks. And because Gremgin was secretly a shapeshifter, shapeshifted into one of the guards, failed, and then basically 2-on-1 2 guards. And it was very lucky because Gremgin could have died right there, and I wasn't going to pull any punches because that was a very dicey move. And Gremgin was a new player, so I'm of the mind, like, I warned Gremgin that this was not good to split the party, and that, if things go wrong, I'm not going to just give you some Deus Ex Machina ending where, oh, you're saved because of something. It's like, nope, if you do this, you could die. And I think he got very lucky in the rolls and succeeded, and you guys sailed off into the sunset, stealing horses. And I think if I recall correctly from that session, one of the players spotted that the guards did seem to see you walk off that were on the wall, and then they rushed down, but you guys kept going into the distance. And that's where you met Cyrus.
Yeah.
So from what I remember, I was just like in a general store essentially.
Yeah.
And this party walks in, and a bit about my character is like I'm an Aasimar, so like a celestial descent type thing. And I had just arrived to this plane of existence. And so I didn't really know anyone. I didn't really know the customs. And there's just these guys that walk in. I didn't know that they had just stolen horses. But like they seemed cool, and I wanted to join a party. So I was like, yeah, I'll join you guys. This sounds like fun. You guys are going somewhere. Let's do it. And then shenanigans.
Just corrupting an innocent young person.
Very much was. It was great because in the start, I feel like we were just like telling, like, oh yeah, no, this is exactly how things work. This is how we do things, and it was just me and
believed you.
Gremgin.
He was like, oh, okay, that's weird, and I don't know if I'm not going to do it, but like, sure, okay, you do that.
Yep. Nope.
So after meeting Cyrus, you guys were at the East Outpost is what it was called. That's where the general store was. And then you venture off up the road, and it's only a day travel on horses, but halfway through you run into some cultists who summoned some imps. And Clay, I wasn't sure if you were there for that fight or not, but maybe because you were there for part of the stuff in Dragonshard, right?
No, I think there was a session or two in and around Dragonshard. I think when I joined, they had just left Dragonshard. I missed the first few interactions with Jeb and the innkeeper. We already had a reputation in town by the time I joined.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we left Clay's character with Cletus as like Cletus's bodyguard all the time whenever we went into combat. We're just like, he's bodyguarding, it's okay.
Right, yeah, that made sense. So you guys were on the road, you ran into the cultists, you fought them, you fought the imps. They had killed like a nice little old family of gnomes that were just traveling merchants. You guys kept going, and you got to Dragonshard at basically 30 minutes to midnight. You walked into the town, and I described it as like this really like anarchic kind of town. There was one main structure. It was this building that looked like an old abandoned castle, but not abandoned, but old refurbished castle. So it was like a casino hotel restaurant, I think I described it as, where basically it was like D&D's version of a Las Vegas casino, and there was lots of gambling, drinking, and tomfoolery going around, for lack of a better word.
Generic sin.
Yeah, and I honestly because I recorded a good portion of the sessions so that I had references for going back on, but as one of the ones that was missed, that was probably the one that I regret the most not getting recorded, because you guys walk into the casino, you sit down, you talk to a waiter, and the waiter is like really sassy to you. I don't remember exactly what he said, but Tifala was asking about dragons, and he's just like, you should go to the library if you want information, and not ask some waitress at a bar, and then just goes and wanders off. And swap. You went and talked to the bartender who was wearing a red cloak, and it was the
Yes.
same smoky pattern as the purple cloak that you'd seen. And you were asking him about cultists, and he said, "You don't want to mess with the cultists. It's bad news." And
Yep.
that was William Jensen, aka Little John John,
Little John John.
What a guy.
Oh, what a guy.
because I can't name an NPC. You guys have to name the NPC.
You
Um,
did
we don't
technically
trust your
name
names.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you
true.
did
I
name
did.
him.
You guys
We just
nicknamed him.
found a better name.
You tried to name him, and none of us could remember his name.
Except Conrad. I think Conrad always called him by the right name.
I always called him by the right name because I had actually written down his name in my notes, so I always remembered.
Well, that's not fair. I also wrote it down. It's just Little John John.
So I just wrote down Little John John.
Yeah, but we started calling him that like the next session because no one could remember what he was called.
Yeah,
And then I was like, no, it's William Jensen. No, we've already said Little John John. That's what it is.
It's not
you got-
similar.
It's not.
Those are not similar names.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a really
Yeah.
bad nickname.
It's like, oh, his nickname is John John? What's his first name? William.
Yep.
that is what you guys did.
Well, I think
Um,
somebody thought it was William Johnson or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Jensen, Johnson, John John.
Yeah.
You know, there's a connection.
It
there.
works. Yeah.
There's something there.
Sure.
Yeah. So
We're not-
sorry. Go.
I was gonna
I
say
won't
we're
cut
not
you off.
totally crazy or anything.
I mean, just
No,
like
No,
no.
crazy.
not at all. Not at all. It's the next part that's the
Yes. So you guys go upstairs. There's some gambling going on. I think Gremmgin robs someone and steals 10 gold out of someone who's just completely passed out, who turns out to be Andy from the next day, which we'll circle back to
Oh.
when we get to him. Yeah, she robbed Andy, as it turns out, but he doesn't know that. He never found that out, so that's fine.
Cool.
But
Good.
she goes into the next room to talk about getting a hotel room. I think, did someone go in first, or did Gremmgin?
That was me.
Yeah.
I was trying to get us a room, and I had no idea how much things normally cost.
Yeah,
Tifala was with me.
yeah,
Tifala and I were trying to get a room. The hotel clerk didn't like me, but liked Tifala and gave Tifala a good rate. But then they were trying to like bundle things, like bundle rooms together, but they weren't deals at all.
yeah,
It was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, you could get like one room for 4 gold, or you could get like 3 rooms for 12 gold.
Right. He
Like,
he was
yeah, 'cause that's a
constantly trying to
deal.
tell you deals that were just multiples of the original one. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was his whole shtick. Yeah. And
Exactly.
then you guys got frustrated and left, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, no, Tifala got a room,
Oh yeah, she just
Yep,
ended up
I
buying
think,
one.
but then
Yeah.
she just
Yep.
bought one because hers was like, I don't know, a lot cheaper. But then for me, it was like so much more expensive, and it just kept increasing when I tried to haggle. It was like,
Right.
no,
yeah.
you want to debate the price? It's now 10 gold. Fuck
Right.
you.
He was a very disagreeable NPC, so that when
Mhm.
Gremmgin encountered him, it was the first time that he had encountered a disagreeable NPC since this whole debacle, and failed the save. And because it was the first time Gremmgin played it, I thought really well, because Nicole and Hannah were both new to D&D. It was their first time playing it, and so they're figuring things out. And I love the way that Nicole did this, because she's like, well, I'm new to it, I don't know what to do. So the urge came over her, and she just jumped across the counter and strangled the guy, snapped his neck by like forcing it against the back wall. Because I made a roll for damage. It was insane. It's just, it's a clerk at a hotel. It's like he's got like 3 health.
And she just became the assassin. So like
Yeah.
she was getting
He was
sneak attacks,
surprised.
she was getting surprised, so critical hits, and it was just ridiculous
was-
damage for how much health he had.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep,
he jumped across the counter and smashed this guy in. And it was one of those old hotels where all the keys are just hung up on hooks right behind it, or in slots, I think I said. And
Yeah,
so the
that's right.
force just kind of created this vibration and bounced all the keys forward. So I'll never forget this.
Flashbacks.
I'll never forget you just miming, like, I just go in and I start putting the keys back.
I'm just sorting the keys because
Yeah.
Cyrus is like, well, there was just a death, but the party tells me that like it's kind of okay. Like murder's not the worst thing to do, and like
Yeah.
Gremmgin just like casually killed this guy, and he seems to have his life kind of together. So like am standing over this dead body, picking up all the keys that had fallen to the floor and like putting them back in the slots.
I think I
As
helped.
Emily,
it's
do you
like,
see
yeah,
the shit show we
that's
were
what should
dealing
be
with?
done. Swap, you came in at that point
Yep.
and you just opened up the cash register and took like what was it, 200 silver out,
Yeah, it was
gave
just
me
like a bunch
half
of
because it
coins.
was too much. And I was like, okay, so we just killed the guy. We're stealing all the money. Yeah, I'm just gonna hold this bag, I guess, as I continue to sort the keys. And then I just took some of the keys. That
Yep.
was like Cyrus's first bad deed. I think probably one of his only bad deeds was just like stealing
Oh,
some of
there's
the
more.
keys. Oh, I know. I'm there. I remember others, but the first one I would say
The
was
first
just
of many.
stealing the hotel keys so that he didn't have to pay for a room.
And there
Yep.
was a coding to the keys, and you guys figured out which one were the best rooms versus the low cost rooms. So you guys picked really nice, luxurious rooms in this hotel. And then you all
Right.
spent the night there, even though there was a murder downstairs, which no one seemed to notice until the morning. At which point you guys woke up. Tifala decided to go and research about dragons. So she met a lovely gnomish couple that ran the library there and found out a lot of interesting information about dragons that I pulled directly out of my ass that session, and ended up being part of the main plot line. So that was
There we
awesome
go.
that Tifala found the main plot that I didn't even know existed and just kind of drove that forward, which was pretty cool. And meanwhile, you guys went to the Colosseum, but first taught Conrad all of the bird signals from the second session. Then you guys went to the Colosseum, which was another part that I wish it was recorded because this was the next session. So we had back to back of that whole hotel murder, and now we have the Colosseum, which was so the other thing about this town, it's very chaotic. The way they resolve things is a little bit odd and peculiar. It's not like many civilized societies where they have rule of order and maybe some sort of court that would decide if you're innocent or guilty and then sentence you to appropriate punishment. Nope. Every crime here, no matter how little, is trial by combat. So
Classic.
it's very rough. And
Yep.
there's this weird thing where it's trial by combat, but you always have the option of choosing a on-staff champion. And these champions had serial numbers. And it was never clear to the party if they were volunteers or they worked there or what it was, but they watched enough of these to see people get murdered in the Colosseum, and then the person who wasn't declared the victor. And if they were the one who committed the crime, they were absolved of the crime, so they were found innocent because of the trial by combat. And then if it was the person who was the defendant, then obviously the person was guilty. So very much that kind of judicial system.
I just would like to point out that Cyrus didn't know that you could choose a champion like before he ended up doing what he did.
No, we didn't know.
Um, I wouldn't have done it probably
Well,
if I had known, but
I think you knew that the champion thing was there because you were so yeah, we'll come to some other stuff that happened first, but yeah, just for that. So
yeah.
the person you fought against was a champion because obviously the person who had the crime committed against them was dead, so they couldn't fight on their own behalf.
Yeah.
So but you didn't know
But,
that you
but-
could have subbed in.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that other like before I volunteered myself, I didn't realize that that was something that like someone else could just jump in. I thought I was doing a novel thing, but apparently not.
So before you stood up for that, so I want to get into why
Yeah.
that happened, but before that happened, you guys met Andy, the person Gremmgin robbed, who was a bookie, and you guys started taking bets because Stewart was there that session, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we gotta make some money off of this." So you guys found someone to place bets, and you guys started betting on the outcomes of these fights.
That's how I made a lot of money.
That's how you guys made a lot of money. Is I think I actually have that written down in one of my notebooks because I did make notes of the bets so that if you guys
Yep.
won, there was odds and everything that you got on them, and I think Stewart came away making quite a bit of money off of that.
Naturally.
Naturally, yeah. But there was
And we
also the
also-
sorry, go ahead.
There was also what the people sitting in front of us was Jeb. Was
Yes.
Jeb sitting? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeb was sitting in front of you, and he would get up because he was responsible for cleaning the battlefield after every fight, which meant dragging the dead corpses off and cleaning up any loose body parts. And at one point, I'll come back to that, but there was also the guy that when you went into the Colosseum that took all of your armor away from you and weapons because you weren't supposed to have anything in the Colosseum because they didn't want fights breaking out during the show. And if I remember correctly, he had really bad breath. And I think you guys had to roll
we all
saves to
had to
not
make
puke.
like, yeah, exactly. Or we were throwing up or something. Yeah.
So why was Cyrus in the Colosseum? Well, Cyrus stood up for Gremmgin when it was called out because they said there was a murder last night. Someone needs to stand up for committing these crimes and honorably fight to prove their innocence. And Gremmgin didn't say it, or no, before you could say anything, Gremmgin pointed to you when you stood up and said he did it.
Yeah. And I think I tried to diffuse that situation a little bit by saying like, no, I didn't do it. I'm gonna stand in for whoever did it, knowing clearly that it's Gremgin, but like I'm not gonna point fingers or just like Gremgin's doing to me right now.
Yeah.
But
Snitches get stitches, right?
yeah, and like Gremgin's not afraid to give me a few stitches, so
Yeah, exactly.
let's not tempt him.
So you go down, you go into the Colosseum, you fight the guy, you kill him, and then you bring him back with lay on hands. But then before you went out, they said if you don't finish off the job, Huck is going to come out here or Chuck is going to come out here and chuck the guy's head off, I think is what I said exactly. And they kind of made like an axing motion, like he'd just decapitate him if it wasn't finished. And so when you came back in, even though you promised the guy that he would be safe, he got immediately coup de grace by the executioner who's responsible for making sure people don't suffer there. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yep.
It was a
Yep.
sad moment.
It was
Cyrus
pretty
thought that he
sad.
had saved someone. He was going to free them, start a little cult or something with this guy. But sadly, that didn't happen.
So while that's happening, Tifala's reading about dragons. Some other stuff happens. There's a whole thing with an NPC who's just telling you fortunes, but actually just ripping you guys off. Um, that lady was funny.
I figured.
But fast tracking that, you guys talk to William Jensen the next day, roll a nat 20 on convincing him to come with you, even though he's reluctant, and then he swoops up his entire tent in one fail motion, and then just you guys go out looking for this dragon called Dwergar, which you're told lives out west somewhere. So you guys venture out that way. You find this cave system. You wander through this cave system, and then eventually you get to the top of it, and you meet a bunch of wormlings as well as Dwergar. I believe at the time, does anyone remember, was she a copper or bronze dragon?
I think she
Copper, I'll
was
bet there.
copper.
So I think you guys found out eventually, but maybe not. But there was the color she actually was and the color you guys thought she was, and no one ever rolled high enough on their perception at the times to figure out the difference because it was copper or bronze, and I think those look very similar when you don't have the other to compare against. So I kind of ruled it that the information she got was from some researcher who didn't quite have all the facts straight. And I think Swap, when your later characters came in, you even said as a callback, like, oh, that guy doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. So the information was kind of like debunked there. But you guys went out to find this dragon, you talked to her, and I don't remember what the dragon said, but do you guys remember what the dragon said to you? Clay, I don't know if you were there at this point.
Yeah. So I joined. I think it was mid Colosseum battle because when I joined this party, I got introduced to Cyrus, who was like killing a guy in the Colosseum, but didn't want to finish him off. So that's where I joined. So
Okay.
with the trip to get to get there, I was there. Yeah, but yeah, so I do remember because we said that we wanted her help and we needed to, was it raise an army? We wanted
Yeah, I
to
think
raise
you
an
guys
army.
want an army.
We needed help fighting a battle that we thought was coming. And she said, no. And we said, please, 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 please. And she's like, I don't care about what humans have got going on. And she gave us some cryptic message, but then eventually conceded and said,
Yeah.
fine, I'll meet you, at the seat of Dragon Shard or whatever, the top of the mountain in 5 days. I think it was 5 days.
It was 5. That's the
Yeah.
part I remember. And it was the top of Craigshaft Mountain. So she said
Craigshaft Mountain, yeah.
So then you guys got the 5-day counter. So that's the only part I remember is that she said like talk to me in 5 days at this completely different place.
She made us wait
Okay.
so long. She sat there and stared off to the horizon, just looking at the water for like, what was it, 6 hours? While
Right.
she
There was
just
something with
contemplated life.
She was
Oh my
she was
God.
watching a ship, actually.
The
That's
ship,
another very
yeah.
important part. She was watching the black shipping company ship.
Shipping company. Yep.
She was and so if we look at the map, so Higendwarf, where you guys started, was in the south, and there's this bay there. So the ship would have to sail out to the bay, and then she was over here, so it was over here at that point. So it was kind of like marking how long it was taking that ship to go by. And that was kind of like a subtle thing that I was trying to get you guys to pick up on, is like every time you saw her, the ship was at a different location, so you kind of could track where the ship was and how long until it got to somewhere. And it may or may not have gotten to where it's going yet, but the party doesn't know that. So
Yeah.
who could say what's
At
going
that-
on with the black shipping company?
That's kind
What-
of ridiculous that the ship is going so slow. It's only like halfway around the island.
It's
Well, if
Australia,
you-
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's big.
It's
Exactly.
wild.
It's
Boats
gonna
aren't
take a
fast.
while.
Yep.
Also, ships don't travel that fast in D&D, as we found out. They go like 2 miles an hour for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, did we know about the whole situation with the cultist trying to raise a demon or something? Because
You guys had no idea what the cultists were up to yet. It wasn't until way later that you guys found out they were trying to summon a demon, or what demon that was. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we
Yeah.
get to that.
That
Yeah, we
was
knew they were up
after.
to something, and we knew we wanted to stop them, and
Right.
we knew we'd need help.
I think
Hmm.
you knew from the book swap they were planning some big event, and it sounded like this big summoning thing, but you had no idea what it was. I think you
think it
knew
was
something
something-
about a big summoning event, but you didn't know
Yeah,
anything else.
big summoning event and something about like 10,000 years of darkness or something like that was.
When did you guys find that out? That might have been when you found out who the demon was, which was Ocarus, or Orcus for people who can actually read, unlike myself.
Right, but it was too late at that point.
It was too late.
No,
It's Ocarus now.
It's Ocarus.
And Orcus is such a lame name, like Orcus the Dorcas. I don't like that. If I can mock a demon's name, it's not that cool.
Yep.
Yeah, but the real story is I can't read, so which, yeah.
Fair enough.
So you guys talk to the dragon, you go down, and then you encounter the 2 bounty hunters, which you guys never got the names of, but they are in the NPC tracker under bounty hunter, so you guys can see their actual names. I think one of them was like David Lancaster, and the other one was Charles X.
Nice.
Nice.
And they were supposed to be these really big, intimidating bounty hunters. There was going to be some epic combat for you guys to fight. You killed them in the first 3 freaking turns. Like,
remember
they
that.
didn't even get to act, and they were dead. And
I'm pretty sure we killed the first one in the first round before they were able to act, and then the second one took a little bit. But yeah,
they never got a turn, though. Like, you guys
okay.
hit them before they got to hit you once.
That's
And they were
hilarious.
dead. And then you found the wanted posters and found out that all the original party members, so that was Fargrim, Hexan, Stewart, Tifala, and Gremmgin, were all wanted for murder in
Right.
Higendwarf. I believe it was wanted alive, and they wanted
point.
1,000 gold each. Yeah.
Spoilers at that point.
So you guys decide
Yeah.
that best not stay in Dragon Shard, best stay outside. But before you even got back to Dragon Shard, Cletus had betrayed you, and you found out he was actually a doppelganger working for the cultists. And
Yes.
you guys had a
Yeah,
big
we-
fight with him.
We
Sorry,
saw
go
a
ahead.
glow in the woods on the way back, and we were like, "What is that? We better check it out." And it was a summoning ritual. And then we had left Cletus with Stewart, I think. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, he like showed up and started killing us. And Stewart was kind of like,
Yeah, maybe Alex wasn't there for that session, or was he there for that session?
"No, I don't think he was there for that session."
Yep.
And we also were all certain that Stewart was trying to figure out how to turn us in and get those bounties without turning himself in as well.
Yes.
Trying to figure out how to collect the bounty on the rest of us.
Yep. That was-
So we got
That's
a lot more
right.
careful with Stewart for a while after that.
That's right. Oh man.
Yep.
And then I'm trying to think. Yeah, the other thing was, I think when you guys found Stewart, did you find glowing pieces of gold at that point? I think you did swap, eh? I think there was
Yeah, no,
also gold there.
yeah, there was gold there, and I think definitely gold at the very initial
Yeah.
part as well that we found.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like when you found Cletus, I think you guys found a bunch of cursed gold too, which was worth 5 times the amount of regular gold per piece.
Right.
Yeah. And you guys found
So
out
we were
much later
rich.
that that was a tracking device, so that's how the cultists always knew where you were. Um, then
Yep.
you guys camp outside of Dragon Shard because you saw that there's a mob coming up from Higendwarf, and you assumed it was for you because I think Tifala flew up and saw the mob and was like, "Ah, shit, we should hide in the woods."
Right.
So then you guys the next day go up to start going up Craigshaft Mountain Ridge, which is basically there's a location I called Switchbacks on that little bubble map, and that's kind of this area you're in. That's where you found the whole puzzle region that had the statue, and you guys spent half of the session figuring out that puzzle to open up the portal to the Feywild, which you had no idea that's what it did. You open up this portal, you don't know what it does. And I think Conrad, you were still in person with us before you'd moved away. And there was this whole thing. Everyone's at the table. Clay, I think you were there for this, right?
Yeah.
And I think Alex was there too. I think we had the full like original party. So we had all of you guys there, minus Emily, because this is like 2 sessions before you come into the campaign. And Conrad goes into the portal and says, "Screw it," because you guys are all debating like, "Oh, should we go in? Is this a good idea?"
You
And then
guys were
Conrad
like
just
doing things where it's like testing, like sticking a stick or like the butt end of a weapon in, and like the wooden handle just like disintegrates or whatever. And I'm just like, it's a portal. It leads somewhere. It has to be safe because who creates a portal that'll kill you and then like creates this intricate puzzle to hide it or disguise it or deactivate or whatever?
It was a
Yeah,
good
Like,
puzzle.
of
It
course.
was a good puzzle. It
that was
took
one
us
of
a
the
while
few
to
things.
solve it though.
Yeah.
Well, I actually had planned that thing out beforehand. I think I was planning it out up until you guys came over to my house. So I was like still finishing it in the last 10 minutes. And I'm glad I did that puzzle because you guys actually did it, which was great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But we went into the other room, Conrad, because I needed to tell you what happened, but you were fine. But I didn't want everyone else to know that because they would metagame that too hard.
Right. And then we debated whether to go. We're like, well, he's dead. He's rolling up a new character in there while we're
Yeah,
deciding what
exactly.
to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I was drunk at that point, and then it was it me who went in next, or I
I
think
don't
didn't.
remember who went in next. I think you guys all decided to go in when I came back from talking to Conrad. I think by that point, you guys had had a discussion that obviously I didn't hear. And then you guys said, we're all going in. I was like, okay, so I guess Conrad, I didn't need to do the aside. But then you went in and you found out the reason the wooden handle got disintegrated was because all your organic material had gotten disintegrated. And
Yeah.
we can mark a second thing for why that portal did that, but the other one didn't. So that'll be the second because I'm sure you guys would like to know why does that portal dissolve all organic material?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
That
get
was
through
kind
the
of
portal.
annoying.
We got through the portal. We're all naked. All the stuff in our backpacks fell onto the ground. You know, the
Yep.
handle of my axe disintegrated. So all I had was an axe head. And then we're like, you know what? We're here. Let's just walk around and see what's going on. I think that
Yep.
the trees were especially beautiful and they were growing a fruit that we had never seen before that was delicious.
I'm pretty sure they were hallucinate. They were making us
Yeah.
hallucinate or something because
I think they did do
I
that.
think
Yeah.
I think it was me and Gremgin who ate some of the fruit or something that did
I think
definitely give us a
Tifala
lot.
probably ate some too, because Tifala
Yeah,
loves
yeah, yeah.
fruit.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Tifala had an addiction to fruit, so she was very
Yeah.
upset when we went through the portal and all her fruit collection was gone.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And then when you guys went back, you lost all the stuff she collected too, because it was both ways that you lost everything.
She was like so happy. She was like collecting all these crazy fruits around, and then it's like, yeah, no, it was sad.
But do you guys remember the other parts that happened? So you guys found the fruit and then you kept wandering through the orchard and then you guys
we
came
found
upon
that
some more stuff.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was that potion or something that people were drinking.
Yeah. And you guys didn't want to drink it. And I had NPCs really pushing it on you.
Oh, Hexan, I'm pretty sure was
No,
drinking it out of
I
his
drank it.
chalice.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, I drank
yeah.
it out of my chalice.
It was more
Was
like
that?
hallucinogen, right? Wasn't it? Or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, no, I was tripping out of my mind that time. Yep.
I was
I
basically
don't
trying to
remember.
inebriate the party. Yeah.
Classic.
Yep.
But yeah, there we found a sword. We got a sword and shield. After we talked to the people for a long time about their lives and history and things. But
Yeah, you
I
did.
was talking to them a lot because I was like, okay, where's the plot hook? Because like, where does this fit in with everything else? Like,
yeah,
where's the side quest that this was whole section was built around? Like, okay, we started the quest by entering this portal. We found the people. What thing can we solve for you? Nothing.
no, they're just kind of like, why
No-
are you guys here? What are you
Get the
doing?
fuck out of our plane of existence.
We
Was
have a
this like the
nice life
Lotus
here.
Eaters?
Honestly,
Oh.
Emily, it was just like I thought the puzzle would be cool, but part of me, because you guys know my rule, if I plan it, it's almost never gonna happen. I didn't think you guys would actually. I thought maybe you'd do the puzzle for 10 minutes and then give up and leave. But I think some party members wanted to do that, but you guys were very determined, so you figured out the puzzle. And then by that time, I had nothing prepared for what was on the other side of that portal. So I was just like improving things. Normally I can fall back on my map and like my world building ideas and like, okay, so you guys did this, so this is gonna happen. It's like, nope, whole new plane of existence. Don't have anything prepped for this. Like I said, I spent all the time on the puzzle. But I think in hindsight, it's really just like a hey, if you guys need to escape this plane, here's a portal you now have unlocked.
Fair enough.
Yep. Yep.
But then you guys came
Oh.
back, found out that the portal was left open, and some unsavory things had started coming into the Feywild.
I think they were about to. They hadn't yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we came back through. We saw all of these unsavory things, and then Cyrus closed the portal before things could get through because
Mhm.
I had made a promise to the townspeople that unsavory things wouldn't come back in again because apparently it happened in the past.
Oh yeah, and they asked you how you got in, and they asked if you had closed the portal, and you guys were like, "Yes, we closed the portal." And you guys hadn't
The
closed the
portal
portal.
will be closed after us. Yes.
Yes, yes, it will.
And I think you also got an elven longsword, if I remember correctly,
Yeah,
Conrad.
yeah, I
Yep.
think that's what Clay was saying that
Yeah.
we got a sword and a shield.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
because you
then I
needed
think
something.
Yeah.
something out of it. Yep.
We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I should
I
have
think it
given
was
you guys
after.
something more, but
That's all right.
Elven stuff. I think that we also got some armor that I eventually used as well.
Okay.
yeah, there was
Yeah.
some
Some
elven
el-
armor at some point.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
was that got from there, or was that got from somewhere else later on?
I thought it was from there. No one just used it because like no, it was heavy armor.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if it was from there or from somewhere else. But yeah, so you guys
Mm.
come back, and then there was a bunch of scepters that had started being summoned by cultists, and who turned out to be a cultist?
No, little John John. That was
Little John
we
John,
were
yeah.
all very upset about
Oh,
that.
yeah,
No.
importantly, he hated the cultists so much, and he was so certain that they were lizard people who are clearly inferior to whatever race he was, and he felt so strongly about that. He had such conviction, and then he just shows up. I don't even think we talked to him. He's just like, gonna kill you guys now." It was
Yep.
so sad, and he was so strong, so much stronger than us.
Okay, so
I-
now that's not
sorry,
the
go ahead.
question, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I'm guessing
I
this
just
is
wrote
gonna
it
be
down.
because I definitely want to know if he was that from the start, or I know later we found out that there's ways cultists can convert people as well. So was
Brainwashing
he?
So-
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's something that I'll do a forecast to. So you remember he had a tattoo on him,
Yes.
right? He had a tattoo with a moon that had like something dripping off of it in the
Right.
night sky. And then we'll come to it later on, but you guys found this tattoo again. So there's actually like a
Yeah.
fun backstory for him that was kind of actually planned out from the start. And Swap, just kind of like to give a teaser, he said he used to adventure and that he gave it up because he was fighting the cultists and said there was no point fighting the cultists. You're not going to win. So he
Yes, he
actually
did.
has like a very interesting backstory that relates to the cult earlier on. So we'll talk about that, but it ties into something else that comes up in a little bit here, which is the crystals and all that. But we'll talk about that in in due time. I want to get Emily in here because we're so close. So you guys fight the Scepters, you kill little John who betrayed you, and then you're like, shit, we have no food, we have no backpacks, we have nothing we need. We need to go back to Dragonshire to get supplies. So you send, I think Gremmgin and Stewart went, the two stealthy players, maybe Tifala went too.
Tifala, I thought it was Tifala and Cyrus.
Yeah, Tifala changed into a horse, and I wasn't wanted by the bounty hunters.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
Gremmgin also went though, because there were some things that happened when Gremmgin went back, that I know about in my notes that happened outside of session. Because Nicole was new to RPing, and obviously because she's my partner, she'd be like, "Oh, can you make it more interesting? Like I'm not engaging in this way." So I was like, "All right, I'll give you a secret side quest." So I gave her a secret side quest, and that happened when she went back to Dragonshire there.
Okay, so
Okay.
the three of them went.
Yeah.
I'm
And-
not sure if we went together then, because I don't
think
remember
maybe-
traveling with Gremgin at that time.
I think I remember it was only me and I feel
Gremmgin
like it was
honestly
only
could have
me
snuck
and
away
Grem-
because
Yeah, I think he may have snuck away because I think it was me and Fargrim that were just chilling at the portal place.
Yeah,
Okay.
and like even though like Nicole wasn't an edgelord, Gremgin was kind of a little bit of an edgelord looking back on it. Just like very like against the party and kind of doing his own thing and just being like quiet and brooding in the corner.
Yeah.
Yep,
100%.
Yep. Oh yeah, no, there's it'll come up. A
But
few
not in the
things will come
toxic
up.
way.
Yeah.
Just 'cause
All right, time to
Cyrus
start.
didn't-
He was a
Just-
murderous lunatic
Just because
who
Cyrus
hated
didn't,
all of
like,
us.
fit in.
Gremgin liked you guys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He said
Yeah,
so on
I-
multiple occasions.
He
He
did.
was untrustworthy.
Yeah, I do think Gremgin hated us, but didn't find us disagreeable.
I don't know. I think Gremgin liked me. Hexan and Gremgin were.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like we formed a bond. You know, we were the cursed ones together.
I think a lot of it was just new to the game and not quite sure on how everything exactly works. So there was a little bit of that. And I think like especially Nicole's later characters were much more working with the party. And I don't know if I'd recommend first time players playing rogues anymore. I used to recommend that, but it kind of seems like you kind of fall into this very stereotypical I'm the quiet, edgy person in the corner. But yeah.
And even though like Gremgin didn't, I would say, mesh with the party super well, Nicole fit in with the part, like with
Yes.
the rest of the players. Like
Yeah.
we didn't like feel disconnected from Nicole.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that was
everyone
fine.
everyone was super great. It was the characters that may have been a little bit problematic.
Yeah.
But all
I
the
mean-
players were amazing.
If anything, Cyrus was just as problematic, just the other direction.
Honestly,
Well-
it was really great seeing the relationship between Cyrus and Gremgin because Cyrus would always like he had faith that Gremgin could change, and it was just
Yeah.
really fun
Like
to
the
see.
fallen party member, and then I like to consider Cyrus the voice from above, just being like, no, your salvation is at hand. We can cure you of your disease. Yeah.
I can teach you.
Not toxic at all.
No, not at all.
So you guys come back from that, and I think for the people up top, there was a boggle that was like trolling you guys, and you guys were trying to figure out what the hell was going on, but it was this boggle that just kind of was chilling about.
I missed the boggle.
Yeah.
You missed the
It-
boggle, Emily.
Oh,
It was
my
like
God.
literally the session before you joined too.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Now I
like some
remember.
part of like with the hags that came in later. I thought it was one of the hags.
I'll tell you what the deal with the boggle is later, but it's honestly like it's gonna be such a lame reveal. It's almost not worth putting in the reveals, but I'll put it in.
Okay.
It's like literally anyone can like look up boggles and read their page in the monster manual and then figure out why they were there. It's not super complicated why they're there, but
Fair.
So you guys go up, you fight some kobolds along the switchbacks, and then the next session happens, and this is where I started recording sessions, so I have much better memory of what actually happened because I could listen back to it. And you guys see some halflings that are disguised as children and claim that their parents were taken captive by some cultists. So obviously you trust the children and you go
Yes.
run
Have
to
trust
help
the children.
their parents. And then you turn the corner and see the cultist crucifying a small Eladrin that happens to be Daphne, aka Emily's character. I love that I brought
times.
you in this way, Emily. And not because
It's a rough way to go.
not because like I hate you or anything. I actually think you're a great person, fun fact, but it was because when I was brought into my first ever RPG game, I was being sacrificed by cultists. So I did to you what was done
What
to
a
me.
callback.
Nice.
Yeah, that was just something for me. So I wasn't being crucified. I was being like roasted over an open fire, kind of
That's
tied
even
to a stick.
worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I went
Yeah.
nice on you. You just got the crucifying
It's
style
still
way
pretty
of going.
bad.
It's a
This is
little
the
love.
cycle of DM abuse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody needs
You
to
gotta
break
keep it
the
go-
cycle.
Joe,
Keep
it's a
it
little
going.
rough though, because like the party. Like it would have been completely possible that we wouldn't have saved Daphne. So it's like
Consider
rough to
that.
like introduce Daphne and then Gremgin's just like,
So
fuck this, I'm out. Stewart's like, I'm not getting paid, screw this. And the party just like dips.
I'm too drunk to
So
care.
there was here's more backstory. So when I was introduced, the party saved me, but they said to me, "You are our indentured servant now because we saved your life. You owe us your life. Until you repay this life debt, you are our slave." So I was the party's slave for the first like, I don't know, 3
Wow.
months of real life of playing in an RPG.
Your friends are the worst, is what you're saying.
This was Riley.
I can see it.
Ooh.
Oh my god.
But so one of the options was if Stewart's like, we're not helping you unless you pay us, then it's like, well, Emily, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna take the help? And then maybe magically
Wow,
you would have
you're
had 200
crucified.
starting gold that you have to give to.
I
don't know.
If Stewart had extorted me at all, I would have stolen everything from him,
That would have
basically.
been great though. Just give it to him and then take it all back at night.
I would not have paid Stewart for shit.
It would have just been this game of stealing each other's shit back and forth. Whoever's on watch is just stealing stuff, and then like you go to sleep and you wake up and it's all gone again.
It's like
Yep.
my perception was 2 and my sleight of hand was 11, which is an excellent combination.
Oh god.
Well, that's great. It means you'll always get stolen from, but you'll always be able to steal from someone else.
Exactly.
And you'll be able to
Always
keep
be a
stealing
constant
the same
exchange.
stuff and not realize that you're stealing the same stuff back.
Wow, there's so much stuff.
It's so
It's
something.
just-
Just
it's
keeps
never
getting new
ending.
stuff.
Exactly. To you, it's just great. It's Christmas every time.
There you go.
But luckily the party was nice and just accepted Emily as one of their own.
Absolutely. Daphne's one of
Appreciate
us.
that.
Exactly.
A nice thing
Mhm.
from that combat too is Stewart used Mind Spike. Is that what it's called on one of
That's
the
right.
cultists?
Oh,
'Cause
that's
that, like,
right.
As soon as we really started to put up a fight, they started running away,
Yeah.
and he ended up mind spiking the last guy, and then that cultist ran away, and we were able to follow them quite far. We had given up our horses to get up the mountain, and they moved quite quickly. I don't remember how we were able to move quickly. I think we just ran for a long time.
You guys just ran. They got a lead on you because they had horses. And then you guys went to their lair, which I had not planned because I did not know about the spell Mind Spike, nor did I know Stewart had it. And I was like, well, shit, I guess you're just going to track these guys back to where they retreated. I also made a note here because this is starting a pattern that you guys are going to notice throughout is cultists always ran away when you encountered them in small groups and they weren't winning the fight. So I put that down for a reveal. Why did the cultists always run away rather than just fighting you guys to the death?
Because they want to live.
Because they want to sacrifice their lives, probably.
Ding, ding, ding. All right.
They had
reveals
done it
made.
before.
Yeah, no,
They'll do it
exactly.
again.
In the
Yeah,
that was the
exactly.
very
That's why they
first.
always ran away.
Not like
'Cause-
this. I want to die a different way.
Yeah. I
Tomorrow.
want my
Die on my
essence to
own
go.
terms.
Yeah, exactly.
I have but one life to give for Gondor.
One life to give to Orcus.
Ocarus.
Ocarus.
Orcus the Dorcas. So you guys trace them back there. You get to their big lair and then decide we're gonna go in the lair disguised as
Yeah.
cultists because we have their robes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. This is important. Andy had said to you that you need to go talk to Solomon Goodman in Mount Craigshaft because he was serious about fighting the cultists. And Andy also said he would pay you for the cloaks and then explain to you guys the structure of how the cult works. So they had the purple cloaks that were the bottom tier. Then you had the red cloaks that were the lower middle tier. Then you had the green cloaks with the upper middle tier. And then the black cloaks that were supposed to be the elite that ran the whole group. And that's what was explained to you by Andy at the time. And I think it was nothing for purple cloaks, 1 gold for red cloaks, 10 gold for green cloaks, and 100 for black cloaks, which you guys later decided was not enough money.
It wasn't enough money.
It really wasn't.
Life, like we were dying at like green cloaks, red cloaks, even at that point. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, again, this is circling back to the DM did not understand how money works in D&D, and if I were to do it all over again, I would ignore all the prices for everything and then just use like market prices as they are and say $1 is 1 gold and make my life so much easier.
Whenever I
Well-
pulled like random amounts of gold or silver out of my butt in my campaign, my sister would convert it immediately to Canadian dollars and tell me how much it was. Like she was getting like a fancy face painting palette, and I was like, "Oh, it was such and such," and she's like, "That's 500 Canadian dollars." And I'm like, "Listen,
Okay,
I'm
but
just
to be
pulling
fair,
this out of my butt."
fancy paints can be really expensive.
They can be very expensive. Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, but
I
there's
can
like
imagine a nice like face painting palette to be about $500 if it was like for professionals.
Yeah,
Or even
especially
more,
if it's like more of like moisturizing, good for your skin as well as just being makeup. Absolutely.
Fancy face paint.
Fancy face
So the
painting.
reason the reason the cloak price was important is because Stewart said that he wanted to make as much money because that was his character, and he wanted to go steal a bunch of cloaks just from the laundromat or whatever. In the cultist lair.
Yeah, we would go because there's lots of cloaks. They all just get
Right.
washed. So if we sneak in and just steal all their cloaks, we don't have to actually fight them.
So like I said, I went back and I like quick listened to all the episodes and like did it fast. But one thing I thought during that whole playback is in my head, I should have said there's not a launder. They could just prestidigitate their cloaks. Because they all had that spell.
That would have saved us a lot of time.
But is it the same? Is it the same cleanliness?
So
Do you feel fresh
Yeah,
afterwards?
I think that way about like in science fiction movies when they don't have actual showers and things, they just have like sonic cleaners and stuff. Like, does it feel as good?
I don't know. I think that's up to the DM or the player to decide for themselves because it just says you instantly clean or soil area of like whatever it is, like I think a foot or something like that, right? So I imagine like I would think it just feels the normal amount of being clean without the wetness. So you just feel like you took a shower and then you've now dried and maybe it's like 20 minutes later or something. I don't know. But it would feel weird because you're doing it in 1 foot patches at a time. So it's like my chest is clean, my ribs are clean, my face is clean.
There's
But
one
yeah.
person who just stands there casting the spell in the laundry area
Like,
over and
this is
over and
the-
over and over again. That's their
this
one
is the
task.
basically-
It's like you have to wait for do you have to wait for a certain amount of time? So like you do it for
No.
once and then wait 5 seconds. Like
No, it's a cantrip, so you can cast it at will as many times as you want. So
But,
like
but it's an
6
action,
seconds.
and an
6
action is every
seconds.
6 seconds. So every 6 seconds, you only get a foot. So you cast it, and then you wait.
And then like your boss comes in and makes sure you're like casting it once every 6 seconds and not taking like a 2-second break because that like reduces productivity by 30%.
Absolutely. So, yeah, 2 seconds may not seem like a lot of time, but it really adds up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are
So,
looking for cultists.
We got ourselves way in over our head trying to get robes. And then I think it's this.
Is this where we met Mick Swirly? McSweeney
So
hats?
this is
Mm.
such a clusterfuck of a series of events. I think this was this was 3 sessions.
Yep.
And Conrad, this was the third one was one of the ones you missed.
Yes.
So that was the one and only one in the recorded that you missed. But there was 3, and the first one it was when Emily was met, and you guys went there, and just for the size of scope, I think I said this layer is like this natural forming rock structure that makes like a column with a small narrow entrance at the beginning. It went up like I think 120 feet high, and it was about a mile in diameter. And at the center was a large cauldron, and you guys knew that, or Cyrus knew it because he flew up to the top using his Aasimar ability and then just stood there, keeping
got
you
stuck.
separate from the party for 2.5 sessions.
Hey, it was a great idea.
It's not in hindsight. In hindsight, it was one of the worst. Actually, no. It gave you the entrance point to get back. Oh wait, no, you guys didn't even use that.
No.
You guys talked about using it, but then you didn't. Never mind. It was completely a waste of time, but it was hilarious and great.
Yep.
So this place was packed with cultists. I think I described it as having like tens of thousands of purple cloaks, and there was like spots of red cloaks. And you guys didn't really see any green cloaks till much later on when events transpired. But you guys were in there for all of like 10 minutes. You went in, you faffed around looking for cloaks. Some people approached you. You guys lied to them. You guys tried to steal from the launder cart that you eventually found. And Gremmgin failed the check. But the way you guys got in, you didn't have enough cloaks. So do you remember what you did to get in? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Emily,
So
tell us what you did.
I pretended to be like an inspector or something, and we had some people as prisoners.
Not some people, one person in particular. Who was the one prisoner?
Who was it?
Who's the most problematic party member at this point?
Was it Gremmgin?
It was
Yeah,
Gremmgin.
it was Gremmgin.
You guys decided it would be best to tie up Gremmgin as the prisoner.
That's
But I think
probably
you guys
for
did
the
like a
best.
fake tie up so that he could just go like, psh,
Yeah.
and then
Although, to be fair, that was probably the smartest because Gremgin was the most stealthy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Gnome would notice Gremgin escaping.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's how Gremgin also ended up getting separated from us.
That's how he
Yeah.
got separated.
How many groups did we split the party into? Like 4 groups between
Three.
the 5 or 6 of us? Yeah.
Because
Ridiculous.
so-
was Tifala was I guess-
Tifala
no, she
wasn't there for these sessions. So if we look in the
Yeah.
tracker, I think she wasn't there till session 13 of chapter 2.
Yeah, right.
So Alex, after the first session there when Emily came in, that was his last session, sadly. So he was NPC'd from that point on until he leaves in a little bit. But you guys, like the people that were there, so that was Hexan, that was Cyrus, that was Daphne, and Fargrim and Gremmgin were all there for this. So you guys split into 3 groups. Gremmgin eventually snuck off on his own. Oh nice, I still haven't turned off that. I gotta figure that out. And Cyrus immediately split up, but you guys made it back eventually, went through the grate, but then there was a voice calling you guys back in. Do you remember that?
Oh, right.
Yep.
Okay,
And-
but then
Sorry, go ahead.
before even the voice, before we met up, didn't Gremgin end up meeting this swirly hat?
I think this is around that time. I think you guys are all together when you exit the first time in this session, and then in the second session is when Gremgin goes and meets Wuldor. But it's like all in this series of events here. Because you guys also I think it was the first session, Emily, you cast Crown of Madness, and then you just kept getting a guy to kill someone because we didn't read the next little bit of the spell because I think it was on the next page and it just looked like it ended, but that's where it said he had to make the save every turn, so we weren't doing
Oh,
that.
I forgot they had to keep making a save.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I didn't check it, and then we're just like, yeah, he's just under your control and just
But
killing
he was just
all-
killing a bunch of purple cloaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I kept like cutting capes off of them, and then they were lizard people. And then everyone converged and
Yeah.
started eating them.
Yeah,
Yes.
Which was super
there was
disturbing.
non-lizard people that you uncovered, and then the other cultists were eating them.
Yeah.
Which made us think that the other cultists were the lizard people.
They were also all fully nude underneath the cloaks. I'd
Yes.
like to point out.
they wore just the cloaks.
Which couldn't have been very comfortable, honestly.
Which
I mean, it's very breathable.
also,
I
it
guess.
makes me question why they had a laundromat and how we didn't see just naked people around.
Maybe you have more than one cloak. Have you considered that?
Each
I
person
would
got
hope
2
so.
cloaks. Yeah.
just two cloaks.
just
They had to
two.
cycle them out.
Here's your
Oh,
standard
God.
issued uniform. You get 2. Don't lose one.
It's like having 2 bed sheets for your bed. So one is in the wash and the other one you're wearing at all times.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. Was there anything I missed in that first bit when you guys were just derping around in the area? I think it was just you guys found the laundromat guy. You tried to steal from them, but you couldn't because they were pretty locked down about it. And then you went back, and then the devourer in the center that was being summoned started psychologically connecting with you guys and trying to get you back in. And this, I
Right.
think, was in hindsight one of the worst things I did as a DM. Is there was one session where it was 42 seconds, and it was just the 3 of you, like Swap, Clay, and Emily, running in and out of the lair because Swap couldn't pass the DC that I set way too high for him.
Yeah,
Right.
I remember that.
Because I
And I
think it
think
was
you
a
got-
wisdom save, right?
It was like a wisdom save, and I think you were disadvantaged
really
on it because you
bad.
were exhausted at this point. And
Yeah,
I think
because
Clay, you were
got
also
too
exhausted
drunk.
from frenzying, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, 'cause
that
I
makes
think you had
sense. 'Cause
Sorry,
I'd
go
probably
ahead.
just gotten frenzy and used it right away and got exhausted, and then it was like, oh crap.
Yeah. And so you 3 are running in and out, and I think you 2 passed the save relatively early on, but Hexan doesn't. So you guys are just trying to keep up with Hexan so he doesn't get too lost.
And
And
he's
then
going
Greg-
like
Because
right
he's
into
just
the
running
crowd.
straight back
Yeah.
into the crowd. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
And he's a monk, so he's
I'd
he's
forgotten
moving
about
so
this.
fast.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because you had 40 feet of movement on these guys.
They're just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause in the end, by the time we found Hexan, he was like right at the front of the cauldron, so he'd get sacrificed first.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we had to like push our way out through waves and waves of guys getting scooped up to be fed to the devourer.
We
I
made it
think-
out though.
Was
Well, I
that-
think around this time is when you guys were running back in, that Cyrus panics, still being on top of the whole thing, jumps down onto the scaffolding that is like surrounding this place
Yeah.
and has to fight his way through a bunch of guys before getting captured, but says, "Take me to your leader," and just like gets the guys to escort him in through. Was that what this is?
I won't leave this as a reveal because it's not much of a reveal. They were taking you to be sacrificed. Nothing
yeah,
you
of
said
course.
influenced them. There was like it was one of those things where you can roll amazing on your checks, but it's not going to change the determination of these cultists. They are here for one reason, and you guys saw them all get sacrificed. They were there to get sacrificed. You were in the lair, you were getting sacrificed too. So when you said take them to see your leader, they're like, that's what we're doing. But they
Yeah,
weren't
and I was
talking to
trying-
you too. That was the other thing.
I was talking to them like
Yeah.
like we just kept going, and I just kept trying to convince them to be like, yeah, you should totally do this and like take me to your leader and like absolutely
Yeah.
or maybe just let me go, options, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were just not bothering
Mhm.
with me at all. But I
Well,
got away
okay.
somehow.
Yeah,
So,
you had
I
the
think-
epic elevator fight, didn't you?
Right. I kicked
Where you just
people off
pushed-
the elevator.
Yes.
Yeah, that was Cyrus just constantly pushing people off the elevator. That one I think might have been like a side thing that Conrad, you and I did, and Swap, I think you remember it because you were playing Dice Throne with Nicole in the background. Because Emily and Clay, I don't know if you guys remember Conrad pushing everyone off the elevator.
No, I remember
I
getting
remember
recapped.
some of that, but not a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I think that was in the solo because what happened is you guys were all separated. So because during you guys running back and forth, Gremmgin is meeting Woldor McSwirly Hats, which is this wizard. And you guys did eventually get back out to the main entrance, but you saw Gremmgin go in there, so you're like, we need to find Gremmgin. So you go in there, and then you guys also meet Woldor McSwirly Hats. And Gremmgin, when he meets Woldor, is like trying to steal from him, trying to kill him, and just constantly stabbing him. And then I didn't have this NPC kill Gremmgin because in his head, he's just thinking, I am so much more powerful than you. This is just like a little child toying with me. It's not even worth my time, kind of thing. He's like that
After
kind of evil
Gremmgin
NPC.
like attacked him like 10 different times. And
Yeah,
every
it's like,
time Mulder was like, whatever.
It's like,
No, and like Gremgin,
ah.
like, oh, oops, my hand slipped.
Oh no, this acid flew into your face again.
Well, and Gremgin has such high deception that it's like any lie you want to spin, it's just like roll. Yeah, 26. Okay, he believes you. Um,
Classic.
Oh my god.
but yeah, he had the rainbow cloak that was all four of the colors with pink swirls on the elbow. So it was the four colors of the cultist with those, and then he teleported Gremgin to the center. I think because Gremgin asked to be, but I'm not entirely sure. I think he wanted to go to the center for some reason.
No, I
Hmm.
think Gremgin just asked to leave or something. Because I remember it being a surprise. It was like, you're right next to the cauldron. You're
Oh,
screwed.
yeah. It might have been like take me to your friends or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
I think it
But
was he needed to
oh,
take something to the center for him, and he just said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll do it." That's what it was. Like
yeah,
there was like some fluid that he gave him in a big like
Right.
bulbous glass, and
yeah.
said like take this,
And I
and he
think
wasn't
Gremgin
gonna
was just
cork
going to
it.
steal it.
Yeah, I think Gremgin was just gonna steal it, but it was just more of the summoning fluid that they use.
Yep.
And then Gremgin got a bunch of heals at this point from Waldor McSwirly hats.
Yep.
Right.
And this at this point, Gremgin wasn't Gremgin because he shapeshifted into a green cloak. Was it, didn't he? Or was he still?
I think when he was with Waldor, he might have shapeshifted into something, but I think before you guys met back up with him, he shapeshifted back into Gremgin, but I think he did look like a generic cultist for some
Mhm.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys went in there, and then Waldor also teleported you. And I think for a little while, Emily was fucking with him and just like doing a bunch of things to mess with Waldor. And
That
because he
sounds
was
right.
using teleportation circle, he had to wait for you to agree to go into the circle. And I think there's a point where you're like, fine, I'll go into the circle. And you just wanted to make it seem like you were what was it? There was something because Daphne would always like never admit she was in the wrong. It was like her character flaw, I think, and it was so great. Do you remember that?
I was just always right. I don't know what to say.
I mean, you were.
I
Of
don't think
course,
she was
yeah.
ever wrong, so it never really came up.
No,
It's
she
a
was
funny
100%
campaign
right.
that
Yeah.
way.
She had
Mhm.
perfect read on everyone she encountered. That's what I will say.
All the time, every day.
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah. So you guys get to the center of the summoning circle, which is in short where you realize that they're summoning devourers, and you guys beeline it out of here, and then all the cultists are getting carried by their arms by imps into the cauldron and getting sacrificed. You guys make it out just by the skin of your teeth, and you see, I think I said tens of devourers get summoned. So it was somewhere between like 50 to 100, you weren't sure, but in that ballpark range. And then you guys beeline it for Craig Shaft, where you meet Solomon Goodman.
Yeah.
And this was
And
the
this is
session that
where
you were not there for.
I wasn't there, and I met up with the party halfway through.
Yeah. So you
Oh,
met
I
up with
had
the
to go
party in the next session.
through Craig Shaft to go find the party.
Yeah, I think you talked to the guards and they told you where to go. You didn't even go
Yeah.
into Craig Shaft, but yeah, that was the next session. This session, you guys meet him and you promise him a dragon to fight with him.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
you also disguise yourselves to look like different people, and Emily used Mask of Many Faces to look like someone else because you guys were wanted for murder, so you thought best not go flaunting your faces in town yet, which is probably a good
Right.
call.
Yep.
And then you guys go from Craig Shaft. I think you also messed around in the markets for a little bit. Like I think, if I remember correctly, I think Emily tried to sell some potions, or not potions, but just colored vials of liquid.
Yeah, I think I actually made some money as well.
I think you did too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm.
convinced a bunch of soldiers it was like a strength potion or something.
Yeah. It might have been
That sounds about
another
right.
time when you guys came to Craigshaft you did. I'm trying to remember if it was that time or not. Because you guys came to Craigshaft a bunch in chapter 2. And
I know
I know
that
Right.
I was definitely there for a session where you were selling a bunch of fake
it might have been
potions.
later then. I think it was later because I think Cyrus was there in that session and you were trying to amass a following. And this was when you guys were
I
trying
had,
to get
yeah.
like the people trained up and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was later. But you guys talked to Solomon and he agrees to give you 10,000 men if you bring him a dragon.
Right.
I mean, pretty sweet deal.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Mhm.
What
And
were you
we
guys'
can kind of,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, we pretty much told him that, oh yeah, no, we're friends with the dragon. We already,
To be
I
fair,
think,
we had talked to a dragon, so like
yeah, yeah, exactly.
close
And
enough
she
to being
promised
friends.
us help too. It was
She
Yeah.
promised us help. We
all
knew where to
promises.
find her.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
I was like,
all the
wow,
pieces
you
were
guys
coming
are
together.
friends with the dragon? This is great.
Yeah. Right, you didn't know that at that point because there was no debriefing time. It was like cultist encounter, cultist headquarters, straight to Craigshaft.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. But what I want to ask the party is, what did you guys all think of Solomon Goodman when you first met him? Because he was very belligerent kind of NPC.
Thought
I
he
wouldn't
was
say
kind of an
belligerent.
idiot. Just like I think I really liked him, but I thought that like how he thought if you melted down the cursed gold, it would lose the curse. But like he had no backing for that, but he seemed so sure of all of this kind of stuff that he clearly knew nothing about magic.
Yeah.
So it's
I
like
can,
I
Yeah.
think this guy is probably a good military mind, but doesn't have any idea what he's talking about with the cult.
Yep.
Which is
writes down
kind of
Solomon and
strange
magic.
thinking like based on what we then later learned about him. It's like you would think that he'd be
Yeah.
a little bit more knowledgeable about some things or know where his knowledge was at its limits at least and acknowledge them.
I will say now, like there are several reveals that I can do for Solomon, but there are some things I can't, because of how he may or may not become relevant in the future. So one of the things I can tell you is why he seemed to be so ignorant about the cursed items, even though he was actively fighting the cultists and one of the only people that was taking it seriously. But I will note that for the reveals later on.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys like Solomon because I definitely wanted to play him like he was like the aggressive militant type, but he was also like a good guy. He was a good
He was
man.
also a loving
Yeah.
father.
He
And he
was.
painted his own armor and his shield.
He did.
Lent me
And
some
Right.
paints. He was a
you
nice
still
Mhm.
guy. He
have
was a
them.
nice guy. I still have
You still have them.
Oh,
And then you guys went up the mountain because you needed to meet Dwergar because you guys are still on the clock. You still got 5 days, and I think at this point you had like 2 days left. So you go up there and then you fight a bunch of gnolls on the way up the mountain ridge, and it's pouring rain the whole time. So you guys are trudging through mud, and you guys have these epic fights against the gnolls. I think there's two of them, and then you encounter a meadow on your way up to the peak, and you find. Oh wait, no, first you guys found the cliffs, right? I think you guys first
Yes.
discovered the cliffs.
Yeah, I think
yes.
that's when I joined back up with the party because I was gone
Yes.
and I joined up halfway through and it's like, where's the rest of the party? They're like down the cliff.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
what it
what?
was.
Yes.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there was the magical cliffs where instead of things falling off like you'd expect from gravity, things would stick to the side and then it would be like reality shifted 90 degrees and you're now walking along the cliff like it's normal flat ground. Um And you guys eventually found out what was going on there. It was basically alignment based. Anyone that was good would fall off, and anything that was neutral or evil would stick to the cliff. So any inanimate object has no alignment, so it would stick to the cliff. And like
Uh,
simple creatures that have no alignment would just stick to the cliff. But I think it was Cyrus and Hexan were the only good party members. So
Yeah.
they couldn't do the cliff thing, but everyone else could walk on the cliffs.
Yeah, so I
I felt
remember
very
just
well left out.
well,
Yeah.
and then I remember meeting back up with you there, Swap, and it's like, oh well, I guess we'll just chill here until everyone else comes back.
Yeah, and that's what was that when you started painting your stones?
Yeah, well, I started carving. I was
Yeah.
collecting stones and started carving the crest of Zeral into them. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, we could
Yeah.
explain that, but Conrad, when you and I talked earlier on the podcast and talked about your characters and all that, like we talked about the stones, I think then, so
Yeah.
I'll
yeah.
leave that. But
Yeah.
basically, like you carved symbols into stones that was your house's symbol because you're trying to
Yep.
amass this cult following.
So basically just distributing stones so that people would be like, yes, you are a follower.
Yeah.
For
It's
more
almost like your
information,
business
go
card.
check out the other podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, bye. Oh.
Very true. And Emily and Fargrim, I think you guys ventured down and Gremgin stayed up at the cliff face, and you guys found. Oh no, Gremgin came with you, and you guys fought some bats.
And I think some rats with red eyes.
Yeah, it was bats and rats.
Yeah.
I think you guys were trying to sneak past the bats, and then Gremgin's like, I fire a shot at one of them, and you're like, no!
Yeah.
They're just little guys.
And there's so many of them.
Yeah. And then you guys got attacked by a swarm of bats. And then you made it to the end of the cave where you found one of those submarine style hatches and you opened it up and there was a big cargo net and you saw the cultist lair. But you decided to leave and not go. And I think you guys threw like a torch or something down there, think you would light everything on
Yeah.
fire.
Because if
Yeah.
I thought the net was on fire, it would drop all of the stuff in the net on the cultists.
Yeah. And then you guys closed it
It
before you could see
didn't.
what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Closed it and then ran away so that no one would come back up and find you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's accurate to what happened. And then you guys came back up the cliffs, and then you walked up a little bit more, and then you found the meadow with this other hatch, and kind of like
Yes.
this chimney that seemed to come out of the ground. You're like, what the hell is this? So you guys,
I think at
Yeah.
this point we were all exhausted, or most of us were exhausted because we'd been walking in torrential rain to get up
Yeah.
to this meadow. And it
Mhm.
was like every 2 steps forward, you'd take one step back going up the side of the mountain.
Yeah, that's right, because it was completely washed out, like all the switchbacks and everything from this huge
Right.
rainpour. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I'm gonna let you guys describe what happens next because I could describe it, but I think it's more fun if you guys describe this.
Oh.
But
Well,
how
I think
does
we
one
were
even
trying to be
begin?
very polite when
Okay.
we knocked on the hatch.
Mhm.
But obviously we were disturbing someone's house, and they didn't
Holiday
seem
home.
to. Yeah, holiday home, of course, right. But we met a lovely old woman who decided to take pity on us, let us in, shelter us.
If
If there's a big if there.
we had to
Yes.
collect a bunch of frogs for her, there's a
Right.
specific type of frog she wanted to eat.
God.
That was only
Well, we
found
didn't
in
know-
these mountains.
Yeah, we didn't know she was gonna eat them. She just said she wanted frogs.
No, she
It's
did
a
tell you
word-
what it was for. She told
said
you
it
what it
Okay,
was
she
for.
did.
Stew!
Frog stew. Yeah.
You get enough frogs, we can all have frog stew.
And we just like desperately needed to get out of the rain, and we're like, okay, we'll pick up some frogs.
Yep.
And it was
And
like,
you guys, yeah, sorry, keep going.
it was just like immediately the best person I had ever met in my life. It changed my life for the better, I would argue.
I think that's a debatable point, but it's okay. Considering the favors that she later asked of you, absolutely debatable.
Oh yeah.
Oh
There
my
were
God.
layers to that though.
She-
Okay.
There's so much. Oh my
Yikes.
God.
So,
So I think I-
spend. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think I told you this at the time, but I mostly thought that was gonna end up being a fight that didn't. So I was just shocked at everything that's happened with this NPC. But yeah, keep going, Clay. I want to hear you guys
Yeah.
tell this.
We ended up spending a lovely night with her, and she showed us how to make stew that appeared to be made out of mud and frogs, and then a bunch of other colored powders and things.
Yep.
And we spent a long time trying to decide whether to even take a bite of the stew, but the pressure from Deirdre was immense. I don't think any of our characters could withstand the pressure. She
The
was
social
Oh.
pressure.
yeah.
So
Oh
there's
my
a
God,
there's a
yeah.
quote I love from that session because I've listened to it more times than other sessions. Is Clay? I think you said verbatim the social pressure from this encounter is more terrifying than any combat we have encountered, and it's one of my favorite quotes from the campaign.
Oh my
great.
God.
I think we
Yeah,
were all
we-
just standing around the cauldron, clutching our bowls of stew, trying to decide if we should eat them or not.
Yeah.
Well, and then she
Oh.
drank it, and
Yep.
I think she like said we should cheers, then said cheers, and then she cheers her bowls with you guys, and then just drank the whole thing in one gulp. And I think at that point, some party members were like, "Screw it." I think Hexan was like, "Screw it." I'm gonna drink
Excellent.
it.
Yep.
I think a few others also did, and then I think it was Fargrim as well, and I think Gremmgin also drank it. And you guys passed the save, and swap failed.
Yeah. And I think I had what was it? Like my entire mouth turned purple.
It
A
was
fuzzy
Yeah,
fuzzy.
you had
tongue?
you got a purple fuzzy tongue.
And purple fuzzy tongue. There we go.
Good times.
Good times. I know. Yeah.
And you noticed Deirdre also had the fuzzy tongue.
And
And,
then
still tasted
we
good.
met Tippy.
Tippy.
Well,
Oh my god.
Tippy.
First Daphne met Tippy. And
Right.
Right.
yeah, Daphne, do you want to describe that experience? Because you went off with Deirdre to the bottom because her bunker was 3 stories. It was all underground. There was the bottom layer, which had hammocks, a bunch of supplies, which were all the powders and everything, and other weird things that looked like spellcasting components. And then there was a sheet that covered a cage where Tippy was. And the second level was Deirdre's bedroom, basically. There's a whole bunch of books all over the floor. It was a complete mess, and then a bed for her. And then the top floor is where the stove was, and that's where the chimney was, because obviously, with heat rising and stuff and smoke in an underground bunker.
The chimney was on the bottom.
And that's where you guys cooked. So that's just kind of like structure. So you went down there, and then I don't know if you want to describe how you felt about Tippy.
I don't even remember the details of meeting Tippy. Just remember it was just like this emaciated knoll behind this curtain that
Yeah.
just ignored all food that was given to him. And just like, because Deirdre had no idea how to take care of anything. Because
No. Didn't Deirdre say that Tippy ate sticks?
No, Tippy ate like bugs and dirt, and she threw bugs and dirt at him. And I think Emily rolled really low on her like insight or nature or something to see if she knew if this is the proper way to treat a gnoll. And I think it was like you rolled low enough that Deirdre was so certain that this is what Tippy liked to eat that you were questioning if you knew what gnolls like to eat.
so I like kept trying to slip him rations and things, and he just stood there,
Yeah.
and it was kind of distressing.
Okay, but
But I
like Tippy
also
was
deeply
still
trusted
alive.
her. He
Yeah.
was, which
Yep.
was interesting. But I don't think he was the first Tippy.
Oh.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
I need to ask, because I still don't quite know why you guys trusted Deirdre other than you just liked the character. Like
I still
there
don't
were
know.
so many red flags.
I think she was just like this maternal figure that I had never had in my life. And like getting her approval was so easy for me
Yeah, that's true.
because she just liked every Bingus activity that I got up to. And I got up to so many Bingus activities that it was just pretty easy. It was pretty easy. So
Well, I
I
think
think I
you
just
found
loved
out
her for
later
that.
on that she had a very similar personality to Daphne. Like she was very much a trickster too, it turned out. And you guys got along on that, I think.
She was great.
Yep.
Yeah.
For Cyrus, like he's the kind of person that's like, oh, you until you do something bad, we're fine. Like assume the good in people type thing. And she didn't do anything bad. She was a little grumpy, but she gave food that wasn't poisoned, I think.
Well,
None of
no,
us got poisoned anyways from drinking it.
so
Um,
I can leave that as a small reveal, or I can tell you guys now what that actually did if you want to know, because all her powders just did something. So okay, if you guys have no idea
Yeah.
what it did, I'll put the purple powder as a reveal.
I was just assuming that it made inedible food edible, but there was some weird side effects.
I thought it was like poison resistance or something for purple.
Oh,
I can't
I didn't know
remember.
There
that.
was different. We did get buffs. That's why it's good. I had a second bowl before we left the next morning.
Oh, it was like temporary HP or something like that, I think.
You
Yeah.
guys got temporary HP the second time she made you stew, because she made you a
Oh,
different
Green-
stew.
right.
She made you twig
Green stew.
roadkill stew the second time.
Right, of course. How could I forget?
Yummy.
And that
Delicious.
buffs your and that gives you temporary HP apparently.
Checks out.
Right? Yeah. But
Yep,
that's when you guys came back. But you drank the stew. The first time you drank it, if you passed the save, I think it tasted like not great. And then after you failed the save and drank more, it tasted amazing.
Right.
That was the whole thing
Right.
with it. Yeah. It was just kind of this thing that I came up with to stress you guys out on if you should drink this stew or not, and it kind of
It worked.
It
Yep.
definitely did work.
Yeah. Give
Uh,
you some kind of stakes, even though there's not many. But
Yep.
you guys went to sleep. You had a long rest. I think you leveled up to level 5
5,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, you guys leveled up to 5 here. But there was an event that was actually turned out to be so important in later sessions that was so random and completely improv that happened in the middle of the night. And this was specific to Daphne, because Daphne was an Eladrin who only needs to meditate for 4 hours, so always got up to some fun shenanigans at night. Emily, do you remember the first nighttime at Deirdre's and what you found out?
Yeah, I was wandering around Deirdre's house and ended up hanging out with her in her bedroom, and she was like, "Do you want to read to me while I like try to go to sleep?" And I found like all of these books that she had written, and one of them was like weirdly specific details about Stewart's life
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
about
so
how many people he had screwed over and all the terrible things he had done, and then it was slowly going into like bad things happening to him.
yeah. Yeah, so I think she asked you to read a specific book. She said there's a book, I'd love a story, and you found out later that she wrote the book. You didn't know that when you're reading the story. And I think I described it as a book of short stories, but they were all like hundreds of pages long, and it was the size of basically the PHB. It's like this big, huge manual. And you read a story about Lance, and he died from being eaten by a whale. And I think I described it as the most boring story you've ever read. It was one of those ones where it describes like every little detail in huge length, so like paragraphs just describing the bark on a tree or something like that. But yeah, you found out later that she wrote all those stories herself, and then you guys were like, we should introduce her to Stewart. But I don't think you guys actually did. And then you
But it
also
was like,
saw that she
yeah.
had a bunch of voodoo dolls too.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I think that was one
Right.
of the first things I described about her place, and I'm like, this is a big red flag. They'll notice that she has voodoo dolls, and this is not a good person.
We
But
were like, cool, but she has a nice hobby.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Cyrus did like a religion check on it, and it was like, yeah, it's voodoo. So
yeah,
what's wrong
you
with?
No need to be so judgmental about it, Joe.
Yeah, we don't
Mhm.
have to judge people's religions. Yikes.
Look, I'm not judging Deirdre. I'm judging you guys.
For accepting others' religions?
Wow.
You know, you can
Wow.
be too tolerant, and if you're tolerant of people who want to kill you, you're gonna end up dead.
She definitely didn't want to kill us, though.
No.
That was
No,
It's
she
no
loves you
one
chance
thing
of
guys.
that was
kill.
clear.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if you look at the NPC tracker, Deirdre holds you in good regards or something like that.
There we
Oh,
go.
Let's see, what does
Fair
Deirdre
enough.
actually hold you guys in? Loving and yelling regards. That's what I have.
Accurate.
I mean,
Yelling regards.
you guys did give her safe passage from Craigshaft all the way to her portal just north of Magisburg. You
Yeah,
guys have
True.
done a lot for her. You help her give birth. The
We
party
helped
has
her give
been there
birth.
for Deirdre.
that was a
Like,
beautiful
have.
moment. That
It
was
We'll
really
come back to
was.
that. That's forecast.
That's much later on.
And that concludes part 1 of this 4-part recap series on our old 2-year campaign called Raiders on the Wall. Stay tuned for parts 2, 3, 4, and a 5th additional part, which is just the reveal of all the secrets and things that have eluded the players over the course of this 2 years, so you won't want to miss that. If you enjoyed this episode of the Eddie Proudfoot podcast, please leave a like on the video as well. If you would, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out. It's a nice thing you could do, You can also follow us on Instagram, Spotify, or Twitter. And as always, may the gods have mercy on your soul.